Well, good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome to today's webinar. Hopefully you can see the screen. Just give me a nudge if you can't. So a really warm welcome, to Tuesday's webinar, all about sales skills today. Now, I left that on the screen because, it not only is today's topic, but it's one of those days that goes down in history because can you remember what you were doing on the 23rd of March last year? Can you? Well, yes, if you can't, I'll soon remind you, and you probably heard about it all today on the news. 1 year ago today was when we sat down in front of the television, or the wireless as the case may be, and at 8 o'clock, the Prime Minister came on and he told us to stay at home. Goodness gracious, hasn't much happened in that particular time. It's a bit like people tend to remember where they were on certain occasions, don't you? You remember where you were when there was a certain major event. I was going to say assassination in Dallas, but I wasn't. I know it's hard to believe, but I wasn't around even those days. So there we go. Actually, do you want me to tell you where I was on the 23rd of? Actually, I was on business. I was on business in Liverpool the night. I went out as well. I went to attend a pub quiz in Liverpool, and I decided. I thought I'd put the Beatles or Jurgen Klopp as my answers to every question. Amazed me, actually came second. The team that finished third was a group of taxidermists that didn't take kindly to me coming second. They chased me down the street. Now, a bit of word of advice for you. If you ever get chased by a group of taxidermists, whatever you do, don't play dead. So there we go. Gosh, thinking about how you spent your time in lockdown. Yeah, I remember the old first lockdown. I spent quite a lot of time decorating. I used my step ladder. I got on better with that than with my real ladder. So let's move on. Further ado, actually. Right, what's today all about? Well, here we are. As you can see on the screen, we are recording. Actually, got a bit of news for you. Just where I live earlier, there was unfortunate. There was a traffic accident, which was unfortunate. A cement mixer bumped into a prison van. Motorists are warned to look out for some hardened criminals. Right, let's move on. So today what we're doing, we're going to be recording it as always. There'll be slides available to each and every one of you. And as always, if for those of you who require some bespoke marketing help, there's a one-to-one. So there we go. Now, as always, for those of you who are time-honored guests on a Tuesday, we'll do a little quiz, and then we'll get into the main event. Please feel free, use the chat line. Here, question 1 in today's quiz. 70% of remote workers say they're more productive when working from home. Ooh, true or false? They have a different opinion. We've got false, and we've got. Oh, I tell you what, we've got split jury here. Yeah. Believe it or not, according to this recent survey, it is true. Now, I'm not sure about this because I can't resist Homes Under the Hammer or Cashmere Attic. If you're working, it's sometimes nicest to go along. Anyway, this question 2 is a leading question here. What percentage of participants on a conference call are less likely to multitask with their camera on? Take your money, right from 32 right up to 82. What do you think? You're less likely to multitask if you've got your camera on. Here we go. I know I'm only jesting. So what does anyone think about that? Pretty obvious answer, actually. There we go. Yes, it is. If you can, it doesn't matter to me. I don't mind if you're doing your ironing. I really don't. It's fine with me. That's no problem. But don't forget, I'm watching you. No, anyway. So there we go. Right, question 3 on sales. What is the best, or which? I know which is better English. What is the best weekday to go prospecting? Back to the days of the 49ers. Yeah, what's the best week to go prospecting? Any takers for that? You've got 1 in 5 chance. What does anyone think? Any take? Oh, where's that to the chat line? So the best day to go prospecting is, this is good old, Thursday. Is it Thursday? Charles got far to go, or was it full? I think it was, wasn't it? I don't know. Yeah. Is it? In the prospect, if you go back to the Klondike and the old gold rush, there are a lot more millionaires who sold shovels than there were millionaires who went gold prospecting. There we go. Ancillary industry. There we are. Question 4. Now we're on good. You like this bit? I was having a bit of fun doing this morning. Famous salespeople. Famous salespeople. Who is that? You have to be a certain age to get that one. Who is that? Oh, the chat line's not really working today. Oh, was it not working? Who is Walter Cronkite? Who's that? Well, Walter Cronkite. That's a good one, Philip. Yeah. Not a cold. That is none other than Victor Kiam. Famous adverts. Anyone who want to YouTube that one? Victor Kiam. I like the product so much, I bought the company. Who is that? Famous salesperson. Next. Famous is a loose term. Who's that? Yeah. Well, you have to be fans of The Office. Remember, none of the eponymous Gareth Keenan. Yeah, from The Office. So there's a theme up here now. Who's that famous salesman? Who is this, the famous salesman here? Who's that famous salesperson? Any takers for this one? Dear me. Come on. Who remembers? None other than Derek Wilton. Who's got that? Did anyone get that one right? Did anyone get that one right? I'm sure somebody did. Who's that then? Another famous salesman from a soap opera. Who's going to? I just had a bit of fun putting this together. There we go. What does it say? What does it say? Off-cut. Yeah, what he was. This guy. Yeah. Aaron Miller from East End. Who's that? Come on now, you must know this one. A very famous salesperson. Who is that? We recognise him, don't we? We do. He is none other than Steve Jobs. Well worth seeing the film, actually. Well worth. Kate Winslet's in it, and very good. And finally, the last famous salesperson is none other than required viewing. Rodney Blackstock. Yes, from East End. There's a bit of fun there. So let's talk about the top 10 things you can do to improve your sales skills. Please feel free to use the chat line, and we'll talk about this. I'll talk about a little story from when I first began my career in sales many moons ago. There I was given, I had a white Astra, and there I was given my keys. And my boss said to me, "Go on, lad, go out there and make some sales." That was it. I had my car keys and my Vauxhall Astra. I didn't even have a cassette player in the Vauxhall Astra. Off I went. So what did I do first? Well, I got a customer listing. And I drove out there because I was involved in the building industry at the time. And I went out there and knocked on customers' doors. Now, if you've ever heard of the School of Hard Knocks, that was it. I learned some new words then. So there I was in my white Astra knocking on customers' doors. I learned more about sales doing that than any other time. There's no substitute for what was known as classically cold calling, knocking on the door. Yes. Gosh, there we go. So, the first tip then, today in our sales skills is all about relationships. Now, it doesn't matter how you have your relationship with your customer or your prospects. It's important you have a good one and a close one and a strong one. And think of it this way. Here's today's thought-provoking question. Often we say about our customers being important to us. But have you ever asked yourself the question the other way around? Are you important to them? You might be surprised. You might not realize. You might not know. If you are not important to them, I would sure as heck try to make sure that you are, which is the essence of key account management and managing your customers, making sure that you're important to them, or really importantly, another repetitious of the word, is to make sure they feel important. How do you do this? Well, ultimately, it doesn't matter how long or your relationship is, how long distance your relationship is, how virtual your relationship is. If you have not built up any rapport of any description and know about your customer, you are on a little bit of a sticky wicket. So please do whatever you can to understand as much as you can about your customer and seek to build rapport. Even if you're in a situation where you only touch the customer, for a very short period of time, you can build rapport. And really, it's done in two simple ways. Ensure that you are genuine and that your communication with them is personalized. We're going to come on to email marketing and things like that, but please get to know about the person, who they are, where they are, a little bit about them. Data is king. It's absolutely essential you get to know something about your customer and to make sure that you do this. Please don't talk at your customers, talk with them. Who wants to be subjected to the barrage, the old classic situation where we used to go into good old days when we're allowed out to go and see the quote unquote second-hand car salesman, and you walked in there, you were pounced on and talked at. Sales ultimately is about understanding your customers' needs. There's only one way in which you can do that: by asking, building rapport, having a relationship. You understand. Absolutely. In that relationship is to write things down, record in whatever way you can do this, but so you know all about your customer, building relationships. So there we go. First things first. So relationships is our number one skill that we can learn. You think about your relationships with your neighbors, your friends, you often built on rapport and built on trust. You'll know about them, and it's no different with your customers. So closely allied to this is the principle about high level, high quality customer service. Now, you can instantly tell me about good customer service you've had recently and not so good. You can probably remember the bad rather than the good, but the good will probably stay with you in the same way as the really bad will. But fundamentally, virtually every survey on customer experience, customer service tells the same thing. And this is the most telling. Nearly 90% of consumers begin doing business with a competitor after a poor experience. People vote with their feet, they leave, they move on. And this is the old adage about customer service is where business is not necessarily won, it is where business is kept. So I'm going to give you a little roadmap. That sounds familiar. based on a survey that was done recently by talking to consumers and really understanding about their expectations. I'll just share this with you. That the first bit of customer service is that you can see nearly 60% of consumers noted that expectations were not met because a company was unavailable either by phone or by email. It's the inability to actually make yourself available. How often have you actually sent a note via a website or rung somebody and they're not there? Surprisingly often. So it's being available first and foremost. Now, one thing often is that many businesses believe they're providing excellent customer service, but they don't necessarily ask, and we'll come back to that. The second thing is shake a leg. Don't think that companies are slow to resolve any issues. The actual speed of response, not necessarily complaints, but issues. Fantastic. I love this one. Better clue. The idea that many consumers believe that companies are clueless. They know more than that. Now, this is the issue. I was talking not so long ago to a guy who owned a car showroom. And I said to him, what is the, he's owned it for about 30 years. I said, what's the biggest difference over that period of time? You know, he said to me, really surprising answer. He said, we don't sell cars anymore. I thought, gosh, where's this one going? We don't sell cars anymore. He fervently believed that at one time, turning the clock back, consumers went in to the garage with expectation they'd be sold a car. Now, the consumer is king. He has the power at his fingertips. He knows all about the car because of the World Wide Web. And so it becomes an issue of customer service and a transaction. The actual selling has gone. And it's all about satisfying the customer's needs and negotiating. So it isn't that. So all his recruitment is all geared, all his staff is geared around customer service. There we go. Would have thought. I walked out with the car as well. Well, not really. Be friendly. Half the people say customers impersonal. They can't even get the name right. How often do you ring up a business and they gobble out, hello, so-and-so, so-and-so, and it's so fast, and that you can't hear that person describe their name. But often you say, oh yeah, my name is Bob from X, Y, and Z. And is it so much more powerful if you actually reply using your name? So just the absolute basics. Put the clock back about 10 years when there was a general election debate. You might recall this. Mr. Cameron was Mr. Brown and Mr. Clegg. Three of them were there debating. And it was considered that Nick Clegg won the first debate of the day, mainly because when it was audience questions to the politicians, and he did something that the other two didn't do. He remembered and wrote down the name of the questioner and directed them by name. And when it came to summing up at the end of the night, he cross-referred to people's names. It's a simple old trick, but it's very easy. Have a pen and paper next to you and just remember the customer's name. On the back of that, as a remote roadmap, it's about making sure you've got the customer's transaction in front of you. My parents are involved in selling their house, and every time they ring up, they've got a system in place. It automatically opens up the CRM system, and you can see all the interactions. So irrespective of who answers the phone at the estate agent, they're familiar with the person's details. Simple stuff, but again, knowing exactly about your customers. The other key thing, it's considered that many companies are antisocial. What does that mean? Often consumers, customers want to see what you're doing on social media. A heck of a good reason for getting sociable. So think about that in terms of that. A couple of quick things as well. For those of you in some larger businesses, it'd be worthwhile, if you're all working on behalf of your clients, or if you thought about ringing up your own company. I did that not so long ago with a client. We were there and we actually rang up customer service from elsewhere within the business. Quite an eye-opener to see how the phone was answered. There we go. So ultimately, customer service, that first impression about having a good telephone voice. So what you may wish to think about then is actually, in that same situation, actually sending yourself an inquiry. So testing your own company's customer service. Critically, customer service ultimately is about retention of your clients. If you're to do anything, is building relationships and moving on to customer service. So the best salespeople you may have will be your customers who are advocates for your business, which is word of mouth. So, second tip of the day, customer service. You may wish to run a customer survey. A great way of finding out. And on the screen are some free, I'll leave it for a moment, some free customer survey tools. And the second one on the list is probably the most well known, but how about trying some of the others? There is no harm in communicating and talking to your customers, as long as you don't nag, pester, harangue them. So, next thing, so we've got third tip of the day is all about brand and effective communication, and about all the sort of touch points you may have with your clients. Brand is not about logos, not about design. It is about the relationship you have with all aspects of dealing with your customers or potential customers. In many ways, it might follow this particular path. Think of the customer journey. The customer is, there's promotion to them. People are searching for you. They're coming on your website, the reviews, the purchase, the shop. It follows sometimes as many as 6 or 7 touch points with your customer or potential customer. So you have to think that with each and every one of those, that you've got a brand which is consistent and is reflective of the sort of the image and the culture of the business, seeing people all the way through that. So think very carefully about brand. I'll tell you a story. Not so long ago, I went to my a contact to my local builders merchant. I wanted someone to come around and do a fence for me and take some trees down. And so what happened was I got 3 people round. Now the first person came around, gave me just a verbal quote, and said it's going to be this, that, and the other, and off he went. The second guy came round and said he'd come back to me. A third guy came round and said, I'll put a quotation through your door. So the following day went by. I had my verbal quote. I was waiting on number 2, and then through the door came an envelope. On that envelope was delivered by the wife, the partner of the gentleman who'd been around seeing me. Opened it up, and there was the quotation relating to the fence and to the trees. And then the following day, I received a phone call from that particular gentleman following up on his quotation. He was considerably more expensive than the first person. I don't know how more expensive he was than the second person because I never heard from him. So, who do you think did the work at the house? Who do you think I would highly recommend? Who followed the basic principles of sales? Relationships, customer services, brand perception, the whole thing. Really simple stuff, isn't it? Listen to the customer's needs, put a quotation through someone's door, and follow it up. We're not talking the most complex sale here. There we go. One of the best things you can do in sales is be a customer. That's how you learn often the most. And then it will manifest itself in social proof. So many businesses then, much like our fencing man or any of those, you'll look for evidence online of how good they are. So, a little bit of a tip. If you haven't done so already, please think about your own social proof. So Google reviews, whatever it might be on Facebook. For those of you in a service-based business, it might be Trustpilot, TripAdvisor, or very industry-specific ones. But garner as many reviews as you can that are shared online and are testament to what you do. It also works particularly well on Google because it's going to help with your SEO and Google My Business. So please have some social proof. The next bit, possibly the most controversial bit. So we've got number 4 on our list, written skills. Now, how many of you spend a large amount of time, like a praying mantis, sitting there at your desk, typing away? So I don't expect you all to be, I'll barred from mentioning Shakespeare. Have all, your poetry at your fingertips. But by golly, do we ever communicate by email? We receive a lot, we send a lot. So a few little tips here on ways in which you may wish to think about how you would communicate by email with your customers. Often, if it is what I call an introductory email to a potential client, you would endeavour to find a mutual contact whom you can reference. I've contacted clients recently, and in my title has been referral from. So I think it's a very powerful way in which you can send an effective email, which ties in very nicely with an informative subject line. Think really carefully when that arrives in your inbox, what you will get is the name of the person, and the thing you'll also be drawn to is what's written in the subject line. So when you are poacher, as opposed to gamekeeper, think about that. Critically, then, is to personalize your greeting. It's not just writing hello. Now, there's 2 ways of looking at this. I think you have to tailor it to your audience. Some people often write, very informally, some very formally. Now, neither is right or neither is wrong, but I'd certainly look at personalizing it, and you get a feel often for your customer, which I'll come back to. When you are writing your email, even if it's your client, please don't write about yourselves. Write about them. Well, the best tips I can ever offer you in terms of thinking very carefully about how to deal with in terms of sales is always to think of things from your customer's perspective. Don't really like the phrase reaching out, but sometimes you want to give people the reason why you are writing to them. I am following up on, I have referral to this, further to your inquiry, whatever it may be, to know why you're reaching out. And absolutely include a call to action. I will be telephoning you. Please click here, whatever it may be. Think of it that way. You always have to have something there. And often a great way is to put in a bit.ly link and the likes of things like that, so you can track what's happening. Whoever likes the word thank you and a close of some description. So it is very much that way. It would be really powerful to think, and absolutely critically, done it deliberately, proofread. Between me and you, how many times have you written an email and thought, I wouldn't mind that one back? So if you're ever writing, it's not a bad thing to write a draft email and have somebody look at it. Send it, test market it. Or you may wish to use software to make your, so don't end up like Ernie Wise play, what I wrote. Use the likes of Grammarly. I like saying that word, Grammarly. So Grammarly is a good site to go onto. It might help you format the emails. You can, and you'll get this, I won't dwell on this here, but you'll get a copy of an atypical introductory email. But think really carefully about emails. But there's no harm whatsoever in borrowing, no less stealing an idea. If you get a really nice email through from whomever it might be, what is wrong with creating copy and paste, create your own files, whatever it might be, and adapting somebody else's work? Because that email, that introduction, whatever it might be, has resonated with you. So why not use best practice? Sometimes the best way of thinking about when you're writing to your customers, personalize things, is to mirror them. Mirror them. If you ever write to North America, you'll see that and probably be like Kevin on the call, writing to China. They write in a particular way. So if you are writing to overseas customers, you may wish to choose a different style and a different approach. But so depending on who you're writing to in this country, if you're writing to an octogenarian, it's probably slightly different than writing to a millennial. So mirror your customers. Halfway through our top 10 list, and probably one of the most significant sales skills you can have is perseverance. 4 P's, often the personal qualities in sales: polite, professional, personable, and you persevere. We don't take no for an answer, but there's a balance here. This is well worn, well shown. 80% of sales require X number of follow-ups. 44% of people give up after X. And the answers are blowing in the wind. 80% of calls do require 5 follow-ups. 44% give up after 1. This is traditional B2B sales. Now, there's always a thin dividing line on this one. If there is an opportunity, a bit like my fencing guy, I'm more than happy to receive a follow-up call, especially as they promised it. But you don't want to be calling your customers every 5 minutes. Quick estate agent story. They are notorious. Gross generalization, but in terms of the way that the reputation that often that industry has is repeatedly calling and calling and calling, particularly when it gets to the critical part of the sale. There's 2 ways of looking at that. One is it's fantastic. The other is it can be a nuisance. You pay your money, you take your chance. But I don't think there's any harm in setting your expectations up so you are going to follow up with clients. Little tip. If you are following up, how about if you're doing it by phone, use the pair. The pair, yes. So P is the personal introduction. Hello, my name is X. The reason why you're calling, which is establish you and your company's credentials, whatever it might be, telling the people who you are. Awaken the consumer's interest, why you're ringing, and then often is to ask the permission to succeed. So this is, have you got 5 minutes type argument? Please can I talk to you about this? PEAR, great way of actually structuring a call, and there's no harm in having a few notes there before you make the call, which may lead you to having, if you don't already, a sales pipeline. How many of you have a sales pipeline? You know, the opportunities you're working on and what you're doing about it, following them through, which may manifest itself, if you haven't already, to have a sales database. You know who all your customers are, where they are, got the email addresses, you know, all the people within that business, so you can communicate with them by whatever means. If you haven't, please get one. And it can often come in the form of a free online cloud-based CRM system, which I've referenced on a number of occasions on a Tuesday, thinking that invest in something that can ultimately automate what you do. A lot of the CRM systems which are on the previous slide will be some things that you can automate your follow-ups and automate your marketing using AI. So think, rather than use traditional sales method, knocking on doors, making phone calls, you may want it doing for you. So think about that. Right. Next on the list, finding those opportunities. Oh, how do you find sales opportunities? How do you find them? Well, if you're not doing so already, by whatever means you choose, please talk to your customers. It is the easiest, quickest, cheapest, fastest way in which you can find opportunities to talk to your customers about additional work, additional sales for them, or referrals from them. And I can guarantee this, that as a rule, that suppliers do not talk to their customers as much as they should. The best tips I've got that they'll always go by is 2 before 10. 2 before 10. What does that mean? Well, how about setting yourself this as a target? Can you speak to 2 customers for the next week before 10 o'clock each day? Because you know what they're doing at the start of the day? They're sitting on their keyboard maybe. How about ringing up a couple of your customers with a purpose? So think about 2 before 10. Starting a conversation, getting a positive experience. No harm in doing that. There are lots of, the world has changed. The days of face-to-face are, well, not so much behind us, but over the last week, I've seen a number of clients face-to-face. We certainly seem to be shifting, obviously with the likes of the vaccination and with the more and more customers willing to accept face-to-face visits, but then to make sure you harness all the other tools at your fingertips. No, never a wasted call talking to a customer. And seek an opportunity, often the best way is to ask for a referral, even if you're doing it face-to-face, by phone, or through an incentive for existing customers if you have an online business. Here are some ways, I won't dwell on this, that you can find sales opportunities, whatever market you're in, whatever industry in. Tenders, gov.uk, through your Google alerts, through Google Trends, through your social media groups, and through speaking to local business leaders, business advisors. There are 7 ways there simply where you can find opportunities, or opportunities will come to you. Who has the most money? What kind of question is that? I'll tell you who has the most money in this country. And who's spending the most? Rishi. If you're in a sector where you're inclined to think about the fact that you may be able to tap into some government money that may be trickling down, that's the way. So I'm working with a client at the moment who is involved in the construction industry, and they keep an eye really closely on the tenders and major projects that are working. Not that they are going to win that project for building a road or whatever it might be, whatever it is in terms of construction, but they want to be a subcontractor to that. So by keeping in contact, find out what's going on. These are easy to do, and they can just be fired into your inbox every single day. Who's got the money? Who's spending it? That's looking upstream, I think that's called. Right. I think we're in the closing straight now. Social selling. Oh my goody hand. Social selling. What's all that about? Well, let me ask you this. Are you following all your customers on social media? You're not. Well, maybe you should be. So making sure that you are following up with them. What are you doing rather than just following them? Do you share? Do you like? Do you tag them in? Critically, think really carefully. If you are following your customers or your prospects on social media, I would advocate you engage with them. And you just do this. You're listening on social media, you listen out for mentions of you, you mention them, you deliver relevant content for them. And one of the best tips I can think of, particularly in many service-based businesses, is if you see somebody making an inquiry in a Facebook group or LinkedIn group or in a forum, do you know anybody who does this? Do you know where I can buy that? If you could answer that question and tag in a customer of yours or a stakeholder or any person that you can refer somebody to, quid pro quo is sales gold dust. Because I'm a great believer that if they believe you're looking out for them, they may be looking out for you. And to make sure you're visible, I talked earlier that 16% of businesses are considered to be antisocial. So making sure that you've got content going out there, they see that you're still alive. Now, in our final straight, are you ready for this? How many of you come across objections and hurdles? We all do. And real tip on this one is just think about value. You're going to come up to those objections. Are you too expensive? This, that, and the other. All the time, be ready. All the time, think about the value you offer them. What is it? And have answers, objections prepared to deliver those. And you get those through skills and experience, and often it's training for you and your team, all the time thinking about the value you offer. Sometimes the best way in finding the value that you deliver to a customer is actually asking the customer why they bought from you. And if you know that, there may be hidden value. So if the client is telling you why they bought from you, when it comes to an objection, maybe delivered by somebody else, potential customer, voila, the answer is in front of your eyes. So that is ultimately the question you want to know. Why customers buy from you? So they've encapsulated that in a few sentences about the value you offer them. And so any objections you have that may become, you are rehearsed and aware with them, rather than just saying we'll give you cheaper or whatever it might be, as a means of closing a sale. All the time to have your answers there, and there's no harm in having those on a piece of paper in front of your eyes and given to each and every member of your team or company, and sharing how you overcome those. So be ready for objections. You're bound to come up against them. But it also encounters the other issue with sales is actually making the decision that you don't want to do business with somebody. It's a hard thing to say no. So it's never a bad thing to be prepared to say no. And last tip of today, sales skills are 10 tips. You have to think as a buyer. Many years ago, I went and lived and worked in New Zealand. There we go, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. I went to live in New Zealand, and I was a manager of a builder's merchant. And I spent time working within each role within the business, to sort of my induction. I learned more about sales then when I had people approaching me as a buyer. The tactics that worked, the things that we've spoken about, lack of report, being talked at, all different, the way that quotations were presented, everything, the way things were followed up. Great if you work as a buyer, you learn a lot about sales. You see what's good and not so good. So sometimes thinking as a buyer. Now, what's changing? The future of buying. It is considered to be a number of things. This idea that it is about a partnership, not a target. So if you are important to a customer, they'll think of it. So it is about the tone of what you do. Often it's education, often it's social media, and not forcing things down someone's throat. There may be a collaborative approach, and the idea that you are sharing, not selling. There's a lot of thinking and a lot of research showing that the days of the hard sell are behind us. Back to the anecdote about the garage. The days of being wanting to be sold to, as opposed to being educated or moving towards a transactional sale, and a consultative one to being sold to. And this is the philosophy that's in place. So there we go. 10 tips there. Just to mention the future. Think really carefully that to be one step ahead, there's a few things there to really take them in reverse order, to really separate yourself out from the crowd. Think about being innovative and why you're different. Think, you may wish to work collaboratively with the customer or with partners. There is a big future in virtual reality in selling. You can't experience that, but people can test drive cars using virtual reality and things like that now. All the time you're focused on the solutions you can offer somebody and using all the tips and tools around you. But you often think about taking something that is really oil and water. Who would have thought that not so long ago that Weetabix grew their sales by 15-20% by taking an innovative, left field, dynamic approach by partnering up with Heinz. And that lit up social media and did an awful lot. And you're seeing it elsewhere. The likes of BrewDog is very good business to work for. Things like that in terms of drinking and driving as being a completely anathema. But there you are, campaigns that a business like that is running to prevent those kind of things. Sometimes the rule book gets ripped up. So that often is how marketing and sales can come together by doing something different and creative. So, final thoughts on today's webinar. You've heard 10 things. Always be thinking customer from their perspective. We're moving to the world of digital, whether that be social media, Google searching, Zoom, whatever. All the time, be thinking about the value you offer your client and why they have come to you. Think customer, think digital, think value. And if you've got the ability to create a great relationship with a client, they become retained and they become advocates for you, and they are the engine room of social selling. You've got yourself a pretty darn good sales skills package. So, thank you very much for listening. It has always been my pleasure. And next week, with that, we're going to go and talk all things Google Analytics. A beginner's guide, and I mean that, a beginner's guide to Google Analytics. So one thing to have a website, it's another thing to know how many people are arriving and what it all tells you. So next week is all about Google Analytics. So I'm going to stop what I'm doing, and I'm going to thank you all. And I'm going to look at the chat line. What does it say? It says, what does it say? Got covered up. Philip's asked, could you follow up using different social media, phone, etc. to vary the method? Yes, great point. If I was following up with customers, I'll be looking to find out the different means. So, for example, you can directly message through Twitter and through LinkedIn. You could do it by text. Not so but there's a lot but in a hierarchy, face-to-face is king. Phone second, Zoom third, or because either tied first, and then you find your method there. Some people don't like the telephone, millennials might not like it, but think about it. But please, email is the last resort. I hope that's helped. Well, thank you to Debbie, and thank you to Jordan. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if there are no further questions, I might see some of you next week. But just bear this one thing in mind. Oh, hang on. You will, Alistair, you'll get a copy. So you'll get a link to the recording and you'll get a copy of the slides. We cover a lot of ground. So I know it doesn't always sink in. So yeah, you'll get a copy of those slides. They will arrive with you tonight. He says, better keep that promise. And what else? Any one other questions? Yeah, you get the slides. If there are no further questions, I'll leave you this final thought. What the difference between knowledge and wisdom is. Knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting them in your fruit salad. So, with that little light-hearted relief, I'll bid you farewell, and I'll see you anon.